We're now joined by Chief Operating Officer of the South African Farmers Development Association, Thandokwakhe, Sibiya, and he joins us now via our video link. Thandokwakhe, thank you so much for your time this evening here in SABC News. I mean, first, let's get your opinion as SAFTA. What is your position when it comes to the sugar tax?
Thanks very much, First Mbali, for hosting us to share some views about this very troublesome policy in our view. I've just been listening to some of the background information and clips that you are playing about the plans of the National Treasury to look at possible changes to this particular tax. I just shudder to think what will happen to the thousands of small-scale growers that my organization represent should the National Treasury decide to continue this policy. We've been very concerned from the outset when this policy was introduced in 2018, as we saw some disastrous impact on the industry. Thank God that the government then came around and introduced what was called the master plan, which then brought all the stakeholders around the table to look at what are the measures that we can look at to try and stabilize the industry, because this particular policy has been a very big problem for the industry that is on its knees as we speak because of so many problems that we are facing.
And talking about the industry itself that you represent, what would you say are the knock-on effects should a policy like this come to law?
Right. I think we must discuss this in context of some of the challenges that the industry has been facing. We understand that we've had 2 mill closures in the industry from 14 to 12. We currently have 2 big companies in business rescue. We've had the impact of the social unrest and obviously the sugar tax itself. If this tax is going to continue, we're going to just see the bleeding of jobs in the industry. We're also going to see the erosion of the revenue, and a lot of small-scale farmers will be forced out of the industry. And some of the reports that have been presented and done recently, they indicate that since the inception of this particular policy, we've seen about 16,000 job losses in this industry. So that particular impact and many other things will happen. It will just be bad news for the small-scale farmers in this particular industry.
Is there a way, perhaps, where there could be jobs saved at the same time also observing, when it comes to healthier living options? Because one would say that sugar really is something that is really not good for our society.
I think that's quite a big claim to make at this point in time, Mbali, given the fact that when this particular instrument, a blunt instrument, should I say, when it was introduced, there was no strong scientific basis on the table to say if you increase tax on this particular ingredient, then you are going to manage some of the public health concerns. For instance, up to now, we're still waiting for the Department of Health to come forward and show us what are the results from their total dietary intake survey, which they should have done before the introduction of this particular policy, as well as the ongoing discussions around the socioeconomic impact of the policy. All those studies were never done before the introduction of this policy. So I think it will be very premature for us to jump into conclusions about the impact. We will need to come up with a very balanced and a nuanced approach to say, there may be concerns about sugar, but what else can we look at to make sure that we take care of the public health concerns in the industry, as opposed to a very clip approach that was taken to introduce this particular tax?
So are you saying that, there should be a research in terms of looking at both ways of promoting healthy living and as well as, making sure that if a tax like this is imposed, that jobs are saved at the same time, because we actually do need those jobs for the state of the economy?
I mean, if you look at the sugar industry in the context of the South African economy, our footprint is mainly in KwaZulu-Natal and a bit of it in Mpumalanga province. If you look at the GDP of KwaZulu-Natal, it's one of the biggest economies, original economies in the country. We contribute about 16% to the national GDP. And if you look at the mix and the makeup of the KZN economy, A lot of that is contributed by agriculture, amongst other sectors. Now, if you want to bring this very key industry in a regional economy to its knees, you can just imagine how much impact that's going to have, that this is going to make on our regional economy and subsequently to the national economy. So we do need to think very carefully about not causing any havoc in the KZN economy and the Mpumalanga economy when we introduce these types of measures.
And as SAFTA, will you be making some contributions to ensuring that this industry and this sector is saved?
Indeed. I mean, SAFTA is a mouthpiece for about 22,000 small-scale farmers in the sugar industry. A lot of them are landless people who farm on small pieces of land in order to sustain their livelihoods, and they cannot be sustainable on their own without any intervention either from government or from the industry that we are part of. So we do look forward to looking at to engaging at those upcoming policy proposals so that we can paint a picture of how this type of a policy is a problem for our farmers, and we'll definitely be engaging, not just making noise, but even based on the science and the observations on the ground, and how we have observed how the introduction of this policy from 2018 has impacted our lives as members of this particular industry, and more specifically, the small-scale farmers that we represent.
And my last question to you, would you say that as this industry, you feel targeted by this sort of a sugar tax?
Well, one might think along those lines to say, why sugar when in fact there could be any other contributor to the public health concerns that we're looking at? I mean, if you look at obesity, do you assume that everybody on the countryside, they wake up in the morning, they grab a can of a soft drink or something? Can really people afford that type of a lifestyle? Or does this differ according to where you are in the country and maybe your socioeconomic status? We do need to have a way of really drilling down into this to say what people consume where and what contributes to the problem that we are dealing with, as opposed to just going for a blanket approach that is based on untested assumptions.